Everybody, welcome back to Video Mess Terry. I got a fun episode for you guys this week as I've realized I've never actually built a MiSTer on camera, and as this project gets more and more popular, I get more and more questions about whether or not MiSTer is worth it, what you should buy, and how to set it up. So I'm going to be doing an entire setup video for the MiSTer FPGA project today, from building the hardware to installing the software to getting it up and running so you can play games on it. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But obviously we need the Terasic DE10 Nano. This is the quote-unquote brains of the MiSTer project. It is the FPGA chip that gets reprogrammed per core to become the hardware that you know and love from back in the day. And you need a few other things as well. Now I did a video talking about how little you can throw at a MiSTer and make it work. This is more of my recommended build. We have a RAM chip here, 128 megabytes, and I'll get into that shortly. We have the USB hub, which is going to give you 7 user inputs, as well as a few other things that I'll explain later on down the line. And you're going to need an I/O board. I am going with another analog build because at this point in time, dual RAM does not seem essential whatsoever, and I love having analog video out. But again, I will get to that in just a moment. So when you get your Terasic, I recommend either going directly to Terasic itself or through DigiKey. Open up the box. Basically all that paperwork is useless because we're not using this board as its intended purpose. But we have our power adapter in there, and of course the DE10 Nano in and of itself. That is what we need. Now, a note on building electronics if you've never done it before. These come in anti-static bags, and electronic boards can be sensitive to electric discharge from static. You're going to see a warning here. Now, you don't need to go all crazy and wear a grounding strap. Just don't do this on your carpet. Don't stand on your carpet. Don't do it on your couch. Hard table, hardwood floor. Touch something metal before you start. You will be fine. But you can always wear a grounding strap if you'd so like. But now that we're into the DE10 Nano itself, this is what we are looking at. And a lot of this is going to have to be plugged into to make it work. But right there in the middle, the Altera Cyclone SoC with an ARM core on it. That is the FPGA chip that is going to be powering all of those retro game consoles, arcade boards, and computers. And it's shocking to me a chip that small can do so much in that footprint, but technology has gone wild since I started using it in the early 90s. Now you will see the DE10 Nano comes with its own little shield right here, and that is going to be completely non-essential for a MiSTer build. So go ahead and just use a Phillips head screwdriver that fits in there, and you'll loosen all 4 of those screws and take that little plastic shield off. You're going to 100% throw it away, but if you're like me, you'll put it in your parts bin and discover it 10 years from now wondering why the hell you kept it in the first place. Now when you buy these kits, 9 times out of 10, they're going to come with a little metal heatsink, and that is important as this chip does not get super hot. You still want to dissipate the heat off of it, and you'll see that fits the footprint of the Cyclone very nicely. So all you do is remove the little sticker backing and go ahead and try to get that chip as centered as possible with the heatsink. You do not need much downward pressure whatsoever. Do not push on this like you're trying to push a boulder up a hill. Just lightly press. It doesn't take anything more than a tiny bit of pressure. It is a very sticky pad, and once you're happy that it is secure, trust me, it's not going to fall off. The first thing we're going to do is talk about that RAM though. There are more than one way to build a MiSTer. You can do single RAM and dual RAM builds, and there's different size RAM modules. I recommend doing nothing less than a single 128 megabyte module. That is going to allow you to play all of the games that MiSTer has to offer, and a lot of those Neo Geo ROMs and some of the Capcom stuff can actually fit a lot of data on them. So you definitely don't want to get a 32 or 64 megabyte DIMM and then run out of space. You will see that it says this size faces outwards, and that will be important in a little bit, but just pay attention to this guide. Don't skip ahead. Don't imagine you assume things. I want you to be successful, and the only way to do that is to make sure you do watch. But the first thing I like to do is put on the I/O board. Now some people will put the USB hub on to the Terasic DE10 Nano board first, and that is totally fine. You can break this tutorial down however you want. I just find that the little USB extension does fit, and I recommend the analog board because if you have a CRT whatsoever, you're 100% going to want to play MiSTer on an analog television. It is absolutely amazing in HDMI upscale, nothing wrong with that, but if you have the opportunity to put it on a CRT television or a PVM or BVM, you're 100% going to love that experience. And honestly, at this point in time, there is no core that requires 2 RAM modules, so you should be fine with just the 1. And you will see here that we line that VGA port up with the HDMI port. This is the side that the board is going to face. You can basically almost plug it in the wrong way, but just trust me, if you line up all of the headers and you make sure that the VGA port is on the same side as the HDMI port on the Terasic DE10 Nano, you will be fine. Now this is all just press fit. It is basically the exact same thing as a Lego, and if you've played with Lego whatsoever, you know it either snaps together or it does not. You need to line the pins on both of the headers up correctly. If you are pushing down on them with any sort of pressure and they are not seated correctly, that means to stop pushing and check your alignment again. Once you're confident that all of the pins are correctly lined up, you can just lightly press down and wiggle it, kind of from those solder joints right there, and as you get closer in, you can just start applying light pressure. Do not over push, do not flex the board. It is very easy to pop in. If it's not working, that means it's not aligned. And if you see any gap whatsoever in those connectors, once you put the screws on top of the I/O board, the ones that we took out for the plastic shield in the first step, all of those tolerances will close up. Just make sure you put the screws in a diamond pattern and then go around and make sure they are all tight. Hand tight only. You do not need to push too hard whatsoever on the screwdriver. Once the screws stop moving, you are 100% good to go, and everything will be lined up and all those connectors will be flush fit from there. Now that we have the analog I/O board or the digital I/O, it connects the same way depending on which one you're using. You're going to go ahead and put the USB hub on as well. And you're going to see it comes with this little USB bridge right here. One end of it goes into the micro USB slot on your DE10 Nano board, and the other goes into the male pins on the USB hub itself. You'll see here from a top view, all you do is slot that in. Now, on most of the boards that I have built, the tolerances are good enough to which you can now just put the USB board on the bottom. But I have seen it where the pins are slightly misaligned, and it will be easier to put the USB hub on first to the DE10 Nano and do the analog board last. You can do it either way, but if you see that it's not fitting correctly, go ahead and just start with the USB board into the DE10 Nano and follow the steps from here. But I find 9 out of 10 times you do something like this, it perfectly fits, no big deal. The one thing we need to do though is we need to remove the standoffs from the middle of the board. Use a standoff screwdriver. If you don't have that, a little wrench should work. These aren't too tight so it won't spit the standoff above it. And once we have all 4 of those off, you're going to see the work we've done so far has gotten a lot shorter, but that is very important because we need to change the standoffs out to allow for the correct height spacing for both the analog I/O board and the USB board connected together. So in your kit, you're going to receive these little standoffs. One end is female, one end is male. And again, just go ahead and hand tighten them in there. You do not need to wrench down on them. Do not put too much pressure. Don't crack the ground plane on the edge of your board. If you think it's tight enough, it's tight enough. If you think you want to tighten it more, if it's not moving, stop at that step. And all you need to do is align the 4 male standoff posts through the holes, and then you just basically kind of wiggle the pins down into position. You can go ahead and just slightly push at that corner and they should just 100% drop in. If you were having trouble with this whatsoever, just go ahead and take the analog I/O board off the top, remove those standoffs, and go from there. And the only other thing you need to do is replace the standoffs on the bottom of the USB board, and those are what we got out of the DE10 board in the first place. We took them out from here and they pop them on the bottom. And now for the hardest part of the build completely is putting these little rubber feet on these standoffs. They're a metric pain in the ass. I don't know why, maybe it's just me, but just trust me and just keep wiggling them around. They will drop in there. And don't do this without them. This thing slides around a table so gracefully if you don't have a little bit of friction there. The last thing I recommend you do is install the RAM module, and that's just because it hangs off the edge, and if you were to hit it the wrong way, it can stress those pins out. It would be very difficult, but I think this is best left to the end, and you will see again it says this side faces outwards. Make sure you do that. This connector is not keyed. If you're not paying attention and you put it in the wrong way, you're going to have a bad day. And just like everything else, align those pins, push down lightly, and just wiggle it back and forth. It will mostly drop in, and basically the last quarter or so might be a little bit more difficult. But what I recommend to do is take your fingernails on both sides of the connector. Don't push down on those pins there, just the plastic itself, and go ahead and push down, wiggle back and forth. It will slot in completely. And now we have a completely fully built MiSTer that looks near identical to the fully built MiSTer I've been showing on the channel for 3 years here. This is my third MiSTer build. It's super fun to do these things, and I want more people to experience MiSTer and realize it is not hard to build them. Not sure what I'm going to do with this third one, probably some on-camera experiments. And when you do get that USB hub, you're going to get this little pigtail adapter right here. It's going to have 2 barrel jacks, one for the USB board and one for the DE10 Nano. These are identical. It doesn't matter which one you plug into which, just make sure both are plugged in. And at the other end, you're going to use the power adapter that came with your DE10 Nano board from Terasic. But now the hardware is set up, we get to go to the software side. And the good thing is setting up a MiSTer is very easy, and just like the last time I did a tutorial on this like 18 months ago, we are still using MiSTer Fusion. That's because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and MiSTer Fusion does the job first time, every time. All jokes aside, you will see here that there are going to be some requirements. A micro SD card of a minimum of at least 2 gigabytes. Now trust me, you want a much larger one than that. Buy the biggest card you can get for a decent price. And fair bit of warning, if you go on Amazon and you see a price for a micro SD card that's too good to be true, that is because it is fake. There are so many counterfeit cards out there right now. I test all my micro SD cards on read-write cycles on my PC before I use them for anything, and that is because I am a filmmaker, so I have a metric crap ton of cards at my disposal that have all been tested. But just make sure you buy from a reliable source. And you will see here that you are able to add scripts to the MiSTer Fusion installation and move them to your MiSTer versus having to do it in a second step, and I will explain what script I want you to put on. But if you go to the downloads page, we're going to grab MiSTer Fusion version 2.7.image.zip. The one script that I want you to put on before you put the micro SD card back into the DE10 Nano and turn it on for the first time is going to be Update All, because without Update All, you're really not going to have much of whatsoever to do with your MiSTer. This is going to bring down so many different options. I will leave a link to Update All here so you can see all the different options there are to toggle and articulate. This video would be 40 minutes long if I didn't do that, and you will download that zip file. Now you will see here I have 2 zip files, MiSTer Fusion as well as Update All, and we'll go ahead and unzip both of those into wherever you want to find them from. I made a custom folder here just to make sure there's some place you can locate. Now whatever micro SD card you use, you need to format it to exFAT. And a warning here, because everyone does this every single time I do a video like this, one person formats the wrong drive and just basically delete something that they absolutely had to have. Check the letter designations, triple check to make sure you are formatting the right drive, and check to make sure that you are formatting the right device with that MiSTer Fusion. So we'll come into Win32 Disk Imager. If you're on a Mac, there's different software. We'll pick the drive letter, we'll get that image file, and we'll go ahead and say write. And this is flashing that image to the micro USB card that we just formatted in the last step. Any of these steps here, if you pick the wrong drive letter, you're just going to erase something you didn't want to erase. So triple check your drive designation. If you screw it up, it's not my fault. All jokes aside, I do see people do this, and it makes me sad when they delete something they weren't supposed to, but it's because they didn't listen. Now if we go over to that new micro USB card we just flashed, you're going to see a scripts folder on the root. So go ahead and unzip Update All, don't put it in there zipped, and you will see that we get one file out of that, update_all.sh. Go ahead and copy that from wherever you just unzipped it into the MiSTer Fusion folder under scripts. That's all you need to do, super important soon. Now just eject that micro USB card and put it into your DE10 Nano, the board in the middle, because I do see some people put it into the top IO board. That is not where it's going to go. This screen will come up and just basically hang out and wait 2 minutes. It's very accurate. It was 1 minute and 58 seconds on my capture, but of course I did speed that up with a cut. And then the screen will go black very shortly, and then it's going to bring up the actual MiSTer software. It goes black, and then all of a sudden it's going to be snowing. First thing to do, plug in a keyboard, USB, and hit F1. So we can get that background to something that doesn't throw all of the different compressions off on YouTube and doesn't make you want to go blind. Pick whatever you like. You can do custom wallpaper. That's not in this tutorial, but just be aware you can do that. If you hit F12, it's going to bring up the MiSTer menu, and then here you're going to be able to define joystick buttons. So plug in whatever USB controller you want and go ahead and map it from there. I do have a tutorial on how to use Bluetooth or Wi-Fi controllers as well, and I'll leave a link below. But that's a little bit outside of the scope of this video, so just pay attention to what's on screen here and go ahead and define whatever buttons you want. If you don't need that button, you can just hit the user button or escape and move on. And if you scroll down here to scripts, you're going to get a warning notice. It's going to say that scripts can be dangerous. And theoretically they can. You can either say yes, you want to continue, and yes, and don't ask again. Depending on your comfort level, you can do whatever you want. But now that you're in here, go ahead and run update all, and just make sure you have an Ethernet cord connected from your DE10 Nano to your internet, because obviously this isn't Wi-Fi capable. It can be, but maybe I'll do a video on that in the future. But if you follow all of these steps, you will be able to build your MiSTer FPGA setup. You'll be able to get the software on it, you'll be able to use update all, and then from there you can just start adding games. And if you watch any of my core tutorials, it is very easy to add the games. Just watch one of them, pay attention to where you put the files, and it's basically identical for that entire process. But short of that, that's how you build a MiSTer FPGA, that's how you get the software set up, and this is how you start having fun in the world of MiSTer. Do me a huge favor, hit a like and subscribe down below, leave me a comment if you have any questions, if you need any help, let me know as well. But short of that, I'll be back next week with another MiSTer video, and I'll have videos throughout the week as well. But it's not hard to build, it's super fun, and I think you should do it. Bye bye.